Hello and welcome to another National Newspaper Publishers Association Black Press of America broadcast. Save local journalism. The Black Press matters, and you are watching the voice of Black America. Today, we have another set of our great publishers to talk to each other and to you. Calvin Anderson, the Memphis New Tri-State Defender. The Tri-State Defender was born the first week of November of 1951 with the intent of being an expression of the desires and needs of the African American community. Now 69 years old, the New Tri-State Defender continues to build on that commitment, offering an inside-out perspective of the community that sets it apart. Cheryl Smith, the Texas Metro News, the Garland Journal, and iMessenger Media. Texas Metro News was purchased by iMessenger News Group and first began publishing in August of 2012. The goal then, as it is today, is to proactively address issues and also provide balanced coverage and analysis of the news. The Texas Metro News' mission is to inform, educate, enlighten, inspire, entertain, educate, and empower. And we also have Dr. Toni Draper of the DC and Baltimore Afro-American. The Afro-American has crusaded for racial equality and economic advancement for Black Americans for 125 years. In existence since August 13th, 1892, John Henry Murphy Sr., a former slave who gained freedom following the passage of the Emancipation Proclamation of 1863, started the paper when he merged his church publication, the Sunday School Helper, with two other publications, the Ledger and the Afro-American. The Afro-American rose to national prominence while under the editorial control of Calvin Murphy. He served as editor and publisher for 45 years, and the newspaper was circulated in Baltimore with regional editions circulated in Washington, D.C. twice weekly, and in Philadelphia, Richmond, and Newark once a week. At one time, there was as many as 13 editions circulated across the country, and the Afro's status as a Black newspaper circulating in several predominantly Black communities endowed it with the ability to profoundly affect social change on a national scale. And sitting in for the Bakewell family is Brandon Brooks, who is the managing editor of the Los Angeles Sentinel. The Los Angeles Sentinel is a highly regarded newspaper that significantly influences the perceptions, attitudes, and buying decisions of its readership. Established in 1933 by Colonel Leon H. Washington, the Sentinel has been awarded hundreds of professional and community service awards and is published weekly and boasts a readership of over 125,000, making it the largest paid African-American owned newspaper in the West. Welcome, publishers, and welcome all of our viewers to the NNPA's live stream as we talk about local journalism. We're going to first go out to Memphis, Tennessee, Calvin Anderson. Calvin, welcome. Calvin, first question, how are you surviving this COVID-19? How is your newspaper surviving it?
Stacy, thank you for that question, and also thank you and NNPA for putting on this conversation with fellow publishers. A crisis doesn't find a convenient time, and a crisis finds you where you are. And so this COVID-19 crisis found the New Tri-State Defender exactly where it was. We are surviving because I think our leadership sat down on the front end and just determined that we had to find a course of action and a direction for which to take our publication. So we had to accelerate a few things that we had on the planning block anyway, which was a transition a little bit more to digital, increasing our online presence. So we've had to reduce down a little bit on our print circulation because the places where we did distribution were no longer open, as we had, sort of a full closure of restaurants, retail shops, beauty shops, barber shops, library, schools, churches, the places where we traditionally had the distribution of the Tri-State Defender. So we've survived by virtue of having a good set of investors that's worked with our paper, and by the good graces of a number of people who have come to our aid, mainly some of our subscribers and longtime advertisers.
Yeah, and it's good to see, Calvin Anderson, that you guys are, like many of our publications, you are surviving this. You've survived other things, so that is also, it's wonderful. Let's go to Dr. Draper. Dr. Draper of the Afro American in Baltimore and DC, an iconic, a truly iconic newspaper in the Black press family. Dr. Draper, how's it been going on the Beltway and in Baltimore with this COVID-19? How has the Afro American been able to cope with this?
Thank you, Stacy, and again, thank you to NNPA. Just like Calvin said, this has given us an opportunity. There's a silver lining, I think, in the midst of all of this, because we too had plans on the drawing board that we've been talking about, launching, finding a right time. Well, there's no time like the present, and so it's given us an opportunity to put into motion some of the things that we had been talking about. It's also given us the opportunity to apply for different resources to increase our COVID-19 coverage and to reach our communities a little bit deeper. And so I guess the word I want to use right now is that we are grateful. I think we would be remiss if we didn't say that pre-COVID-19, news publishers were suffering, not just Black newspapers, but news organizations all over were suffering just because of the changing times. The Afro's been a little bit ahead of the curve for a while, but you don't stay ahead of the curve in technology because it's constantly moving. But we're grateful for this opportunity. We're taking advantage of every resource that we can to continue to do what we've done for, I know you said 125 years, it'll be 128 in August, but to continue to do this. And I don't know who just said it, but we've been through things before. So I pulled our coverage from 1918 to look to see how we covered the Spanish flu, and same types of things. They didn't call it social distancing, but people were in masks and trying to figure it out. The difference now is we have a much more robust platform to share the news with our readers. And so this is, like Charles Dickens said, I think the best of times and the worst of times.
Yeah, thanks for that, Dr. Draper. That's really interesting that you went back to 1918 and insightful for all of our readers. Cheryl Smith, how's it going out there? You got at least 3 different publications, so I'm sure it's been a challenge. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, you know, we have a can't stop, won't stop mentality out here. And so I just have to say thank you to NNPA. And I feel honored to be here with the publishers who are here, because I've been talking with some of Dr. Draper's team about the digital. I visited with Brandon earlier this year in Los Angeles and talking about what we need to do, because yes, we're in a pandemic state of mind right now, but I'm in a pandemic state of mind all the time, because we're dealing with pandemics in our community every day. And this is something, you know, I talked to a young brother in Chicago, and he said people are dogging them out for getting together and gathering in Chicago when people was telling them that you could die tomorrow. And they say their mentality is always that they could die tomorrow. So they are, you know, they're in a state of mind of survival. And that's what we are in a state of mind of. So this is a time when, you know, we're going harder and going stronger. And Calvin was talking about distribution, and I'd like to talk to him more about that, because I can tell you, I was honestly afraid of going to my printer, leery, I'll say, of going to my printer and saying, you know, cut back on my print amount, because the churches and a number of places, hotels, places where we distribute, nursing homes, restaurants, libraries, and everything were closing. And I said, well, you know what, I'm going to find another way, because I felt like if I went to my printer and said, hey, I need to cut back a little, that when it came around and we see the other side of this pandemic, that my printer might say, well, Cheryl, you know, this happened, we're going to have to go up on your prices. So I felt if I stayed constant, we wouldn't have any issue. So what I actually did was I went to Black restaurants, Black-owned restaurants throughout the Metroplex. And I said, hey, I will give you advertising in our publication if when someone comes to pick up their 2-piece and a pepper, that they get a paper with it, or they come to pick up their pizza or whatever, their Jamaican food if they would get a paper with it. And I had several businesses, gave up a lot of real estate, but it was very important to me. And what I'm finding is that I want to keep it going because actually, when I go to those publications, my papers come out on Wednesday. So tonight they would be at the churches. Well, now they would have to be, people wouldn't get their papers until Sunday, a lot of them, but now they get them on Wednesdays, Thursday, Friday, they get them constantly. So I'm changing with the times, working, going really aggressive and a lot of things and doing like Dr. Draper said, looking for innovative ways and people to partner with and finding grants and money to help us to grow.
Well, Cheryl Smith, you mentioned something too about collaborating with Calvin Anderson. This is what it's all about, and talking about collaborating with Brandon Brooks and talking about these things among our publishers. Brandon Brooks, it is an absolute pleasure to have you. The Sentinel has been a backbone in Southern California forever, it seems, and certainly, like many of our papers, a trusted source of information. You guys have a fantastic reputation. What's it been like out there, Brandon, for the Sentinel?
Well, first off, like everyone here, I just want to say thank you for this opportunity, this time. You, Stacy, you're doing just a phenomenal job with your reporting throughout the year. We syndicate as many articles as we can from you throughout the year. And thank you to Dr. Chavis, president, also the chairman, Karen Carter Richards, just for this opportunity. I think this platform is wonderful, and it's an example of how we're all adjusting to the time. So I'm just proud to be part of this, this platform. And, just giving my input where I can. To answer your question, we've been trying to weather it the best we can. It's been a gut punch, to say the least. But we, you gave such a great intro. We do see ourselves as one of the premier papers on the West Coast, and if not in the country. We're thankful, and we don't take that lightly. But even that, it's still as we said before COVID-19. There was an emergency at that time as well. I believe that, advertising is the core of our businesses. And I think throughout, during this time, as we could call it, this COVID-19 pandemic, it's vital that we continue to push advertisers in these major agencies and firms and governmental entities to advertise, because this is the time that messaging needs to be utilized through our readers. As many of these publications have shared, we've all been around for many years, decades. And the reason is because we're a trusted source throughout. As you heard Ms. Draper say, she went back to archives in the early 1900s. And how powerful is that, not only to have that on record, but just an example of how Black press has thrived even when we weren't given the opportunity. So it's a little ironic that we're in a time today where, as we say, 100 years since this last similar depression that the country experienced, we're kind of experiencing it again. And so I think that the Sentinel is, I think we're blessed to be enduring it. We've seen advertisers pull out, but we've also seen some advertisers step up, and I'm thankful for them to do that. And we're still pushing it. So. I'll obviously get into some more details, but it's been difficult. But I think we understand that more than ever, the information of sharing with our audience on COVID-19 updates. I have a writer that I've assigned to the Daily Mail updates. So we update our website daily. The LA County, Los Angeles County has a daily update. We update that story as well. The governor's constantly putting out news. So it's so much information coming out that we're just trying to, get as much out as we can. And I think it's forcing us all to adjust to this, let's just call it the digital age. So we were already making that move and that maturation, but it's expediting some things. And I think we're happy to be here. So again, thank you for this opportunity to speak today, and just on behalf of Black press. But the struggle continues, and that's what we're here to talk about as well. So thank you.
Well, it's interesting too, for Cheryl Smith, Calvin Anderson, and Dr. Draper. I called the Sentinel yesterday looking for Brandon, and they said, well, let me send you over to his assistant. Brandon got an assistant, y'all. I mean, man, we We are live. This is the NNPA, National Newspaper Publishers Association, the Black Press of America. In fact, it's the 80th anniversary of NNPA and the 193rd year of the Black Press of America. And as usual, we have a lot of publishers, other publishers who are not on this live broadcast, watching, and other people. And we'll be taking questions from others as well. For instance, Patrice Miles she said she's a New York City journalist who honors you all. So we get a lot of those messages throughout. So just so you guys know, here's a question. I want to start this off with Dr. Draper about the innovations that you have put in place during this COVID-19.
Okay, well, we've put several innovations in place, and I think it might be easier just to show you. So there are a couple of things I think we're ready to share. So one thing we've done is called Business Helping Business. And so it's a take on the traditional advertising, but it's different. And here's what makes it different. We went to corporations in Baltimore and Washington, and we said there are a lot of small businesses that are hurting because of COVID-19, hairdressers and barbers and restaurants and those types of things. Yeah, that's the page there. And so what we asked them to do, would you sponsor a page that we could then put business cards on that page at no cost to those small businesses? And we had several organizations like Baltimore Gas and Electric, Kelly Associates, Care First, who sponsored the page. And so the ads that you see are at no cost to those businesses. And then we turn around and said to those businesses, we're starting a membership program at the Afro. We're going to switch from a subscription model to a membership model. Would you then be willing, for our members of the Afro, would you be willing to give a small discount to our members once we get the membership program launched? And they said yes. And so it was a win-win. It was a win-win for those who are sponsoring that page. It's called Business Helping Business. It was a win certainly for the small businesses who could not afford to advertise, but some of them still have takeout, and other things that are going on and no way to let people know. And certainly it was a win, or it is a win for the Afro. So that's one innovation that we have done. We have a couple of more I can share later, but that's at least one.
It sounds great, Dr. Draper. Cheryl Smith out there in Texas, tell us, same question, innovations that you've put in place?
Well, and it's really interesting because I could sit and listen to Dr. Draper all day long, all day long. And when we're at NNPA, first, I just have to tell you the feeling that I feel when I attend NNPA events. And, Calvin, we sat and we talked, we've been together. I feel reinvigorated when I come away from our conventions and our conferences because we're doing some darn good journalism. Some really good work across this country, and I get so excited about it and just wish that everyone could see and feel that I have a journalism degree. And just like I chose to go to an HBCU, I chose to work with the Black press. It was not because I couldn't get a job anywhere else. And so I just get really pumped and about it. And one of the, just looking at my publications, I'm the baby of the bunch in my group. I'm in a market where we have papers that have been around 60 and 70 years. And I've worked with all of them. And guess what? If they call me today, I'm going to help them as well. And I was talking earlier about how we went, because we said, how do we survive in this time when people are cutting back? And one thing that we always say, we go where the people are. So we have the passive. We have the passive, which means that we do put papers in the churches and we do put them places where people go. But even more importantly, we go where the people are. So if whether it's the NAACP, the Black Chamber of Commerce, sororities, fraternities, organizations, schools, we send like a street team there, and we're putting the paper in folks' hands. And and encouraging them. You know, that's just one of the things we want to be. We want that presence to be there, because if you're just waiting for people to pick up your papers, and that's why now with the restaurants, we're finding that we're having to make multiple deliveries to these restaurants so that they have paper to give out with their orders. And it has worked for us so much so, interestingly, I've had a business contacted me that advertises and said, hey, I want to give me your Cash App. And I said, what are you talking about? And she said, well, she wanted the Cash App because there are people, everyone is not on the internet.
Yeah.
And some people picked up my paper at a restaurant and contacted her business. And that's what's happening. And we're excited about that.
Well, Cheryl, here's something else that, you know, and I won't name names, but someone is very excited to know who is that, and I quote, crazy happy man in the photo behind you.
Well, let me tell you, this is what happened. Our Mass Transit Authority, DART, we have Dallas Area Rapid Transit. We did a project with them, a trade actually, and we were on several buses throughout the Metroplex. And this is actually the advertising from the and so what we did, we were looking at, you know, when people look at advertising, we wanted something that people would pick up and actually that they will look at. And words, you know, just come on, if we put a newspaper with just words on the front page, people won't look at it as quickly as they will with pictures. So I said, who would be eye-catching? And the person there is Dallas County Commissioner John Wiley Price. He's the longest he's been in office, like 34 years. And he's a warrior. And the cute one in the picture is my grandbaby. That's Jeremiah. We tried to get him a bow tie like the commissioner, but if I move to the side, it says, fearless leaders to future leaders. We've got it covered. And we're saying that whether you're young or seasoned, that we have something for you in Texas Metro News, Garland Journal, and iMessenger. So it was on buses and bus stops all over the Metroplex. And folks, you know, first thing they want to ask us, Commissioner John Wiley Price, is that his child? You know, so
you know what?
That's who it
is. You could have put Calvin Anderson on that picture. Calvin, out in Tennessee. Same question, Calvin. What innovations have you put in place out there?
I think our innovations was just an acceleration of the digital platforms that we've been working off of increasing our Facebook, Instagram, you know, Twitter presence, having our publication on its daily digital and updating that to a consistent point. I love the aspect of what, you know, Toni pointed out on their membership push. We sort of put ours around a digital subscription push, you know, made the pricing, you know, very affordable, and to try to attract and connect with our audience that had been accustomed to receiving our publication in its normal distribution sites where it was no longer available, but to push them toward the online platform. So we ran something on a constant basis, emphasizing and stressing the digital push. And then we wrapped around, you know, a few things of the content promotion as we saw as our responsibility to make sure that our population in the Memphis area took the COVID crisis seriously, paid attention to the instructions that were being given by government officials, paid attention to the safety measure that was being stressed by health professionals. And we saw it as a responsibility on our part to cover that, but then saw that as something that we wanted to then seek others to participate with us in it. And we put some emphasis around talking to the hospitals about support of, you know, National Nurses Day. We talked to insurers and others about how to be a part of getting forth the message on it. So it was sort of content driven, bit of subscription driven, but leaning very heavily on the online and digital.
Yeah, and Brandon, I was trying to put Calvin Anderson in an ad for Cheryl Smith, but I'm sure if I looked deeply, I would find you on some GQ cover So with that said, Brandon, I want you to weigh in for the Bakewell family about the same question. What do you guys have done innovatively during this time?
But thank you again. And I did want to say, I didn't have to say that earlier, on behalf of our publisher, Danny J. Bakewell Sr. He appreciates this platform so much. He's sorry he couldn't be here today, and I'm honored that he allowed me to be here and speaking on behalf of the publication. I also manage the LA Watts Times newspaper, so it's an honor just to be part of this experience and this legacy of Black press throughout the nation in Los Angeles. But for the Los Angeles Sentinel, I think similar to Mr. Anderson, we've kind of started to expedite or ramp up our digital presence. We were already kind of on that trajectory, but we're still a big proponent for print. So we print is very important to us, and I think during this time of as I would even say, highlighting the digital divide in America and throughout different counties and districts in America, hard copy is more important than ever. So, even at times people may say, oh, this new generation doesn't read hard copies. Well, there's still a variety of individuals that do read it, including younger individuals as well. So, but I do think to stay on point with the question is, yes, our digital presence as far as our e-blast. We have a weekly newsletter. We have daily email blast. We, similar to Mr. Anderson said, social media is so important and vital for communicating with people nowadays. That's something that we've ramped up as well. We've also stuck with some of the things that we had prior, which was we have a Taste of Soul scholarship fund. For those that aren't familiar with the name Taste of Soul, the LA Sentinel and the LA Watts Times, part of Bakewell Media, we put on the annual Taste of Soul Festival, which happens every October. But that was an event, and obviously due to the current pandemic, that event will not happen. I won't say it won't happen, but won't happen under the same guides that it was happening before, which was a large gathering. So, but we did see that, look, we have opportunities for students to have scholarships, and we've raised funds, and we have advertisers that are supporting that and sponsoring that. But I think the innovative thing that we're doing is we understand that we have to get directly to consumer, directly to the reader as quick as possible. And that is the power of the digital era. So I'm proud to see that our team is stepping up, with the internet connection and a laptop or a phone. You can do a lot of things, powerful things. And I think we're utilizing those tools to our best ability. But we're sticking to it. I think I mentioned it a little earlier that, the struggle was before as well. I mean, as I said, the LA Sentinel, we're proud that we garner a decent amount of advertising, but again, it's never enough, and I think Black press across America, we understand the urgency of advertising, and we're so vital. Our communities at times, if not many times, are taken for granted. And we get, countless press releases and people are saying, hey, run this, run that on behalf of a client. But what about the proper support, with us in a continuous basis to help us write these stories? And maybe we don't just want to run the press release. Maybe we want to have a writer interact with you, but it doesn't, the money doesn't fall from the sky, as they say. But again, some of the innovations, we have a digital e-paper now. Our entire paper is given to our subscribers and our public every Thursday via e-paper. So nowadays, people don't want to touch things as much. You can obviously, access that. We have a mobile app, which I'm excited that is launched on the App Store. We also, in the last 30 to 60 days, we've become part of Apple News, the Apple News platform, which is very exciting. So now the LA Sentinel, if any logger around the country logs on around the world, you type in Los Angeles Sentinel, LA Sentinel, you're going to get the LA Sentinel news. So we're trying to find more hubs that can direct readers to us and continue to grow our analytics, continue to grow our digital readers and subscribers. But I also want to say we still have not forgotten about our print audience. And because there are many people that don't have access to an internet. There are many people that were going to Starbucks or finding a local library or a school nearby to utilize, quote unquote, free internet access. So we still understand, as Ms. Smith said, getting it to these restaurants, the businesses that supported us, that are still open or are still interacting with their customers if we can bridge. So Ms. Smith, I think I'm going to take some advice from you in that idea. I like what you had presented. So us here at the Sentinel, we may follow your lead in that. But again, yeah, we're just really ramping up our digital presence and continuing to showcase that we're still a viable print entity in the nation and in Los Angeles.
Yeah, and see, that's part of what this is all about. See, you and Cheryl Smith can connect and discuss these things. But Brandon, you touched on a number of things that we had questions about, and I'm going to go to Dr. Draper, the Afro-American, to start off with. Are the publishers, are you guys doing anything to diversify away from advertising as a core revenue source?
Absolutely, and you have to diversify. Diversification really is the key. Heard Brandon talk about events, and so that's part of a diversification strategy. Not that events will work for us now unless they are virtual events. And so I'm going to show another graphic of something that we are doing that is a diversification. We have certainly the longevity to do it, so we can using our archives to create revenue opportunities. And so we could show this. We just produced a magazine. I mean, it's brand new. It's called To the Front, and it celebrates the 19th Amendment that gave women the right to vote. And what a lot of people may not know is that, there were lots of African-American women who participated in this. And so we produced a 100-page magazine that's in both digital format and it's in print that people are ordering now. We went back to our archives and pulled some things, but we also engaged some writers to write articles about what it means to vote, which is very timely, of course, in the season that we are in. A lot of interest in that, a lot of interest. I know I heard the question about, or maybe it was the answer, Brandon was talking about young people and their engagement. Young people, we have found, have an insatiable appetite for news. It's just getting it to people in the format that best suits them. And a millennial family member, fifth generation, I'm fourth generation family member for the Afro, fifth generation millennial produced that magazine To the Front. When I asked her, I said, we were to diversify, what is your generation like to read? Is it everything social media, everything just, online? She said, oh, we love magazines, especially if they're well done. And so she took the leadership and was the guest editor for this magazine and did a beautiful job. So that's just one way that we have diversified our revenue.
Yeah, and it's interesting, Dr. Draper, that you mentioned about the Black women of the suffrage movement. I'll throw a little plug in there for another one of our newspapers, the Washington Informer. Denise Rolock Barnes, back last August, started doing a weekly series on Black women of the suffrage movement to lead up to this year's 100th anniversary. So it's amazing what our NNPA Black press publishers are doing, and it should be noted, and I say this often because I think it should be highlighted that we have so many Black women publishers and business owners in the Black press. Cheryl Smith obviously is one of them. So Cheryl, same question to you, Cheryl, about advertising as a core revenue source. Are you doing anything to diversify away from that?
Well, I've kind of taken the lead from like the Afro, from Real Time, Philadelphia Tribune, and especially the Sentinel. And we do find ourselves, talking about those events. We actually do a Healthy Living Expo on Dr. King Day. So the city has the Martin Luther King Parade, and where the parade ends is at the African American Museum, and that's where we're set up with vendors and a lot of panels and stuff going on. But we're looking at other ways of getting to people, and we're still trying to tackle this beast that is advertising, because we're being devalued by people who devalue spending their money with us. But like it was said earlier, they have no problem at all sending us their press releases. And when you look at the black press, and they really don't understand, is the black press fueled the Million Man March. And the black press fueled the Obama campaign. And I just remember it was very frustrating for me when President Obama won, because you want to know what? All of these papers, the ones who wrote disparagingly about him and everything, they made big money off of double and triple reprints of their cover with President Obama on there. But I would submit to you that I would take, if you took all the NNPA papers and put them up on display, you would see that our coverage was comparable or better. And so, still we're looking at ways to make people respect us. And sometimes, sad to say, it's our own people. It's our own people who will not value it. When you see them on Facebook, and they will actually they'll post when they appear in someone else's paper, in a mainstream paper, so-called mainstream media paper. They don't give us that same love when we give them much more space in ours. One of the most precious moments for me was coming to DC for my sorority's centennial and seeing the Afro there. It was just all for me, because I love the black press so much, and trying to get that love and get people to recognize it. And you want to know something? I'm finding that young people appreciate it. They appreciate it more than some of those who are seasoned like me. And so it's a work in progress and process for us. So I try to have events and try to encourage people. We do podcasts every day, talking about COVID and giving out information. And on Tuesdays, the young brother, he'll be 20 Saturday, a freshman at Morehouse, that's his day. And he brings people on and engages them. And then we have conversations. And we think of one of the podcasts is inside the 2, 3, 4. So we have a 20-year-old, a 30-year-old, 40-year-old. And then sometimes I jump in there just to throw their minds out of whack. But we're trying all kind of ways to reach people to get money, but we can't let advertisers off the hook with the amount of money that we are spending.
Yeah, again, for those just joining us, this is the NNPA live broadcast. We do this with our publishers every Monday and Wednesday. And just a little programming note, tomorrow we have a very special broadcast tomorrow at 1 o'clock Eastern time. We have Ice Cube of the Barbershop. Are we there yet? Straight out of Compton. We have Ice Cube tomorrow to talk about some great things that he's doing, a new movie, the 30th anniversary of his America's Most Wanted album. So this is going to be a big event for the Black Press of America. Calvin Anderson, I wanted to go to you with that question as well. What are you doing to diversify away from advertising as a core revenue source?
Well, we hope to continue to make advertising a big part of what we're doing, but part of the diversification really is events, which we have done in the past. Each year, we've always operated what we call the Best in Black program, and that was to, one, highlight the best things out of the Black community and business, civic organization, entertainment, event management, and so that will serve as both a revenue generator for us, but also a brand enhancement for us and an opportunity for us to expand our reach into greater subscribership with principally Black businesses, Black organizations. So we look to continue that. In June, we have been working through a collaborative effort that will be sort of a docuseries that we will do in conjunction with a couple of other partners, the Memphis Black Business Association, Greater Memphis Media, and the Tri-State Defender. And we'll launch sort of a docuseries that will cover some issues around education, around businesses, around government politics, and around health disparities. and we will have sponsors that will go with that that docu-series that will kick off in June. So we see that as being our first attempt at doing something that may very well be in the virtual world versus things that would be laid out in events. But we look to continue the event that we're doing, and then the promotional efforts that we look into. Like we did a Mother's Day special pushing for people to honor their mothers that will be a part of print advertising, and we will look to do something similar around the Father's Day standpoint. And we're working on recognition of graduating seniors, which seemed this year that didn't get their opportunity to be spotlighted within their respective schools. So we're trying to work on something that will spotlight graduating seniors and give an opportunity for focus on them. So we're always looking at ways that we can add to our revenue stream, but we try to do that in a way that reminds us that we want to do those things connected to our readership, connected to our circulation, and connected to the rich body of citizens that we have in Memphis that's been supportive of Tri-State Defender over the years that we hope to have even further engaged.
Yeah, thanks, Calvin. Brandon, same question for the Sentinel, Brandon. Anything, I think I know the answer to this, but we'll let you articulate it.
Well, yeah, thanks again for, these questions are wonderful. And I'm just enjoying listening to everyone. I get so empowered listening to fellow publishers and persons in our industry, and that's what I'm just blessed to do this every day. But yeah, events have been very, very important for the LA Sentinel. We obviously have the Taste of Soul Family Festival, which was in its 15th year. We average over 350,000 people in one day on Crenshaw Boulevard. It's turned into, I believe, arguably the largest street festival in the country in one day. I know it's certified in California, and that's even with the Coachellas and all of that, because they average hundreds of thousands over many days. But in one day, let's just say the Boulevard is rocking, and it's really awesome to see. Another event that we've put on, we were approaching our second annual Women's Empowerment event. This year, we were set to have a conversation with Stacey Abrams, and it was it was a event held at the California African American Museum, where we would obviously bring in sponsors and a lot of political entities, and we would host an intimate conversation hosted by a very prominent anchor here in Los Angeles named Pat Harvey, who's really a powerhouse in the journalism field and for Black press, and she works with CBS and KCAL. Last year we had a conversation with Congresswoman Maxine Waters. So this was an event we were gearing up to, and unfortunately, due to the COVID-19 pandemic, we had to put that on pause. So we're looking at new ways of innovating that. We see that there's these platforms with via Zoom and Facebook Live and going live on different platforms. So stay tuned. I think we still will see a women's empowerment, maybe just through a digital sphere. But I think events are very important. And I think many of the publishers have spoke about that. It's a way for us to interact with our public directly, and also to show advertisers and sponsors the relationship we have, because I think at times, it's looked at as just who's reading your paper, but there is such an intimate relationship and trust factor that has been developed for generations when you deal with the Black press. I mean, our grandparents would read it, our parents would read it, it would be in the barbershops. So, similar to how Jet Magazine was on everybody's mantle for many years, the Sentinel and the Afro, the Metro News, all of us have been a staple in people's households and lives for years. So when people hear that our companies and our newspapers are putting on events, they trust us and they come out and then they support. And I think that's important to say. So, however, I'm very optimistic in these times that even though this pandemic is changing the way of life, I do see this as an opportunity for Black press to kind of leapfrog and compete with daily entities around the country, and as they call them, quote unquote, mainstream. And I'll be direct, white publications for the most part, because they're focusing on issues that aren't really concerning African Americans. But Black folk, we need our voice consistently. But events, again, to answer the question, have been a very important way for us to interact and kind of be innovative with our public. So we also have a Star Quest competition, which is a kind of, let's just call it, it's kind of like an American Idol, let's call it the Black American Idol for lack of better words. But what we've done over the last 5 to 6 years, part of the Taste of Soul, is we would actually have a stage, a Star Quest stage, where potential singers and performers would have an opportunity to showcase their talents in front of these thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of people in front of the boulevard. And that's an opportunity of a lifetime. So we still see an opportunity now in this digital pandemic, as we say, that we're going through, that we're probably going to ramp up our Star Quest competition, because last year, even before the pandemic, was the first time that we did a digital competition. So seeing that this pandemic has kind of forced us to not have an in-person audition, we're very excited to see some of the maturation of that, the Star Quest. And we're thinking of possibly some different things, dance competitions, allowing comedians a platform. So there's so many ways that we can interact with our public and with some of the LA audience. And we are in a large market. I mean, again, I don't want to say this lightly. The Sentinel, and I'm blessed to be working for the Sentinel, we're in one of the larger markets in the country. So some of the issues that some of the other publications have, we may not have, but I still want to stress that we are fighting that battle just like everyone else. And I think equitable advertising has always been the issue. And myself, I also work as an advertising sales executive with the Sentinel. So I'm always on the front line pushing. We've been pushing local government, and I'm happy to say in the last few weeks, we'll see what comes of it. But I was part of a coalition that I actually partnered with an Asian media, Hispanic media. And we got together and we said, you know what, we need to go after the Los Angeles County, rightfully so, and ask for our equitable share during this pandemic of the messaging. Where is the messaging to our public? Yeah, we can write about it, but you guys have a budget to get this information out. And I believe there's a bookmark that they, I wouldn't say they have to, but it's almost a social service that the government has signed up for, that if you're not messaging the public about what to do during COVID-19 through the Black press, whenever you ever else going to work with us. So we obviously were having that discussion before this, but more than ever now it's urgent. And so we're holding these governmental entities accountable, and stay tuned. We did see just a positive to show some momentum, because maybe it can happen in other areas around the country, but we got the Los Angeles County Board of Supervisors with pushing, as part of that ethnic coalition, to pass a 5-0 motion about 14 days ago to focus on investment in hyper local media. Now, we know that hyper local media may not just be ethnic, but we are a key portion of that. And that was expressed in the verbiage of that motion. So I'm very much on the front lines of pushing, advertising and but also from a social justice standpoint, that if you're not on the front lines sharing with the public what to do during COVID-19, you as a institution, who's ever the advertiser, the sponsor, is dropping the ball. You are leaving us, as they say, to die or to get sick or not to have the proper information. And when we have a president who's telling people to drink bleach or drink, these products, and damn near, I don't even want to get on that. That's a whole nother subject. I'll let you ask the Trump question if that comes up. We're not going to give him time.
You're watching the NNPA live broadcast with 4 of our great representatives, publishers, and a managing editor in Brandon's case. There's, as always, we have some reader comments that I just want to address right quick. Kim Mangan is asking about the viewership for these live streams, and there has been, and I have to tell you, Kim, I don't know what numbers you're seeing, but we've seen some truly promising numbers of people watching our streams each week. The Dallas Weekly is asking about virtual events. Are virtual events already in the planning stages for any of these publications? And we'll get to that. Jason Douglas Lewis of the Los Angeles Standard says that they've been bouncing around different ways to produce revenues. Hosting events is one thing that we've been strongly looking into. David E. Kelly says he'd like to start a sports and entertainment photo wire service, and he wants to deliver quality photos, et cetera, et cetera. Barbara Anderson says, great job. Dr. Draper, just piggybacking off of what Brandon mentioned, a number of the publishers host events that have become large and well attended. Post-pandemic, Dr. Draper, do you believe that there is an opportunity for publishers to work together to take these programs and nationalize them?
Absolutely. So I think the more that we work together and band together, the greater impact that we have, whether it's in events or in our news coverage. Think about, and you asked about events, but think about how powerful it would be if all of the NNPA papers ran, not just we have the opportunity now to pick up things that are written, for example, Black Press USA, and that's great. But when actually crusaded for social justice together at the same time through every platform that we control. And so I think that that's powerful. I think it's also powerful that we would do events together across the nation. Some of the publishers have great success. We have great success with a lot of the events that we're doing. And so I appreciate this forum even today as we talk about ways to support and help one another, because we have similar issues, but we have so much strength. I think Brandon said it, and I think Cheryl said it as well. We have strength that we're not even tapping into yet. And so I think it's a great idea, just to answer your question. And we have great teams of people. We have a great team at the Afro, and there's no shortage of ideas. It's really how we implement them, but I don't need to reinvent the wheel if Brandon's doing it well in LA. And yes, there are different markets, but I'm certain that there are things that we could do and share with one another. And I want to give Karen Carter Richards a shout out. I believe I remember her saying that as well. That was part of her platform as she ran for the presidency of, or rather the chairman of the board of NNPA.
Yeah, and I want to kind of, Cheryl Smith, I think Dr. Draper probably addressed that adequately enough. I wanted to, unless you wanted to add to that, but I wanted to ask you this. I wanted you to expand on the importance of the publications to the communities you serve. How important is the publications like the Texas Metro and the New Tri-State Defender and the LA Sentinel and the Afro American? How important are you to your community?
We bring it home for our community. And I'll give you an example. When my mother passed, at the funeral home and Golden Gate Funeral Home, you may have seen they had a reality show about funerals. And so John Beckwith said, do you want to put your mom's obituary in Dallas Morning News? I said, no, I don't think so. I said, you know why? I said, I just really don't think I could do that. And they said it was $600 for a very small thing without a picture. And my mom has spent the majority of her life, she was born in Florida, the majority of her life in New Jersey. And she has spent the last 18 months with me here in Texas. So it really didn't matter. But guess what? The Dallas Examiner, the Dallas Post-Tribune, the North Dallas Gazette, the Elite News. I'm trying to think if I'm missing. I have mine is one more I'm missing there. All of those papers ran my mother's obituary. Now, it would have been a slap in the face for me to pay $600 for Dallas Weekly. For me to spend $600 and pay for an obituary in the Dallas Morning News when all of these Black newspapers were doing it for free for me. Now, it just so happens NABJ, and I'm I wasn't the secretary then, but I'm the secretary of the National Association of Black Journalists. And one of our founders lives in Dallas, Norma Adams Wade, and she writes a column for the Morning News. So she wrote about my mom in her column. So it got in there anyway. But even still, I can remember as a child visiting my relatives in Plant City, Florida. And I'm talking about over 40, 50 years ago. And every week, someone would come to my aunt's house and pick up a little envelope. I got to know what that envelope was. That was her subscription money that she was paying for the Florida Sentinel. People live for that paper because they find out from birth who was born and who died and everything in between. We put things into perspective. When this person was on trial with the feds, not the baby. He was on trial at the time we actually took the picture. We did an 8-page broadsheet look into this man to bring that perspective, because he wasn't going to get it anywhere else. And that's the type of journalism that our papers do. We give that perspective that other people will not bring to the table. And so I have my issues about, I know that our wire service, the brother talking about his bigleague.com doing the photos and everything. I know if something happens across the country in any of the NNPA members city, I will call them and say, or look on, now I can look on the internet and see what they have been covering and pull their stuff, because I want their perspective. And so it is hypercritical that we continue doing the work we do, no matter what kind of challenges we're facing, because it is so relevant. We are the historians. I know a television journalist said before that journalists are not historians. We are, because when people go back and look, like you said, Brandon, about the hard copy, they want to see what was going on, and we bring that, we put it into perspective.
Stacy, let me jump back into that conversation. I know we've been going around and getting comments, but Cheryl touched on something. We are trusted in our community, but not just to give the news, but also to get the news. So I just want to give a concrete example. For example, many people know that Catherine Pugh was the mayor of Baltimore City, and she was convicted of a federal crime and was sentenced to federal prison. She hasn't gone yet because of COVID. This is a true story. There was a group of us. She's also a member we're members of the same sorority, and there were a group of us outside of her house praying as other news media. We've been calling them mainstream media. I call us targeted media. But anyway, we were outside of her home, and the prayer group was breaking up, and I felt this tap on my shoulder. She wasn't there. She was in her house, and they said, the mayor wants to see you. And I said, she wants to see me? And I've never been in her house. And she said, the person said, yes, she wants to see you. So they invited me in, and she said, I want the Afro that I plan to resign tomorrow. I don't want the Sun to know it. I don't want the television stations to know it. She said, because I know that you will put it in you'll put it in there correctly. You'll give the right angle to it, and I trust you. And so, sure enough, her attorney wrote, the statement that we were to publish, and we put it up that night. She trusted us to do it and to get it right. True story. CNN called me the next day. I didn't talk to them. They said, we saw on Afro.com that Pugh was going to resign this afternoon. Did you really talk to her? Is that true? I didn't dignify that with a return call, because I didn't think I had to. And I know we did. I know we did. So you're talking about what happens with our community. And it doesn't mean that we cover up for our community. When things are not right in our community, we ought to say so.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? But we are not publishing fake news. This is real, and people trust us, talk to us, call us, give us things before they happen, trust us to embargo them, right? And if we have to. And that's what more people need to do. I mean, she did that, but I want to say even to those who are watching, don't run to the other paper, the so-called mainstream paper first, and then complain to us that they didn't get it right, that they only took a part of your quote, that you're not, presented in a good light. The Black press has been here for 191 years. We're going to be here, and we understand. We didn't just wake up today and say we're Black. We've been Black, and we understand what it means to be African American in the United States.
Stacey, I'd like to say one comment.
Yeah, go ahead, Brandon.
On that, I think, look, in my seat, especially as managing editor, I'm asked many times, what type of stories do you look to cover? I'm not shy about saying I'm trying to find us in our best light as much as possible, because the reality of quote unquote mainstream media is we don't see ourselves as wonderful as this panel highlights. I mean, black people are doing wonderful things in all cities across America. And unfortunately, many times the negative aspect is brought up. And, I'll even use a literal example. The other day, I had saw that I get press releases from other media, and Extra Entertainment sent me something, but I'm not going to beat them up too much, but I'll say it was gossip. It was about, some Real Housewives who have some beef. And I said, this is really unfortunate that during this time, this is the news that they highlight, that they amplify. And it really, touched my heart to remind myself of why we do what we do. So when I am able to highlight a business owner, as Ms. Smith said, she was able to do an 8-page spread on the individual in her city to really showcase, as Ms. Draper said, to highlight that the mayor felt trusted, that look, I can at least get my information to you, and I know it will print as is. So we are a trusted resource, but we also are a source that is so important and vital, because we are a service, a social service, to show people really who Black people are. And we are wonderful. We are not monolithic. We do so many variety of things, but we're doing them in all of these industries, from business to health to religion. So it's an honor to work on behalf of Black press and do that every week. And the stories of positive are not hard to come by. It's just unfortunate. As I tell people, it's probably the more difficult part is trying to simplify, what are we going to speak about every week? But again, it's an honor to showcase, African Americans at their best. And I'm proud to do it.
And just going back for 1 second to Dr. Draper's example, what happened with the mayor there, and we was all watching and admiration that the Afro did break that story, and we were happy that they broke that story. The same thing happened on the national level with us here at NNPA. We had covered the Bill Cosby trial, both trials from beginning to end. And the Cosby people had felt that we were very fair. We didn't take a side. We were very fair in our coverage. Well, last November, we became the first and still the only outlet to interview Bill Cosby from prison. Well, we got a lot of national media who called and said the same thing, Dr. Draper. Did you really talk to Bill Cosby? We had audio of the call. And so that helped convince them that the Black press was not making this up. Well, we're not fake news, so just to your point. So we do get that. Calvin Anderson, I'm glad to see you back with us. Calvin, let me ask you a question. I want all the publishers to talk about this. We know that recently the PPP program, the small business loans that the government was offering to the small businesses, a lot of our publications were missed. We also know that Facebook actually gave out some pretty sizable grants, and several of our publishers, I believe the number is 17 of our publishers, out of maybe 25 who applied, got an average of $100,000 from Facebook. Have you been able to secure any of these grants or small business loans, Calvin Anderson?
Stacy, thank you. I do want to, before I go into that, give tribute to my editor here at the New Tri-State Defender and our photojournalists. They're constantly reminding me that we have real reporters on real street corners talking to real people, taking real photos and putting together, a realistic context of what's happening within our community. And that's the thing that is the driving factor that makes us very relevant, beyond our printed pages in the publication, but to the other platforms that we share that information with. And it is that credibility that's offered in the New Tri-State Defender, and really that's offered by all of our NNPA member papers, that we can take confidence in that it's a reliable source. So we were very fortunate and blessed, will add, that we applied for and did receive the Facebook local journalism grant. We did, working with our bank, to which we've had really a good working relationship over the years, able to apply for and receive a PPP CARES Act loan. And we also received a Google Journalism Emergency Relief Grant. So we've applied for all of the things that we were eligible to apply for from the business end, so that we were able to continue, enhance what we are doing on the content end.
Yeah, that's good. And before I go to Cheryl Smith with that question, I just wanted to add a footnote too to our experience to go along with Dr. Draper's experience. Our experience with the Cosby interview, we had a major publication actually quote us in that interview with Cosby as saying that we were Cosby. We said we were Cosby supporters. There was nowhere on that interview where we said we were Cosby supporters. So it shows you the hate that the Black press does get from the so-called mainstream media. Cheryl, I just felt like we needed to add that because Dr. Draper brought up a great example. And so, Cheryl, we wanted to go to you with that question about the stimulus and about the Facebook grant.
Okay. I was not one of those who got up to $100,000. I did apply. You can't win if you don't play. So I did apply, and that was after I received a smaller personal grant. I did apply when they first released one. So I did get a smaller grant from the Facebook Journalism Project. And the economic injury disaster loan from the SBA, I did get a small grant from them, and they explained to me that one that I got does not have to be paid back. Because I said, I'm not looking for loans. I said, why don't you let the Lakers or Ruth Chris or all of them, let them get a loan, give me the grants. And I got actually, and tomorrow on our podcast, we will have the SBA on talking about, because they say they have $1 billion left already. They need people to be applying for PPE and economic injury disaster loan. And I got a grant from the Pointer Code Foundation. And so those are the ones that I did get, and I'm looking for. I haven't heard from Google yet, Calvin, but I'm out there. And the thing about it is, and I think everyone will admit, sometimes I don't know what day it is, because we're working constantly. And Brandon's sitting there being modest. Man needs to stop. He needs to cut with it because he's running things, But we're constantly pushing out and trying, because my position is that if you don't show people your worth, I remember when I went into journalism, I said, if there's a war, I'm going, because it seemed like people were making their careers off of covering a war. If you don't make people think you're relevant, especially during these times, they ain't got no time for you when it's over. When the good times come back, we want them to remember the Texas Metro News, Garland Journal, iMessenger, that we were there.
Yeah. And Cheryl, to your point about Brandon, remember I told you he has an assistant, and I think his assistant has an assistant. So, Brandon got it. Right. Brandon,
look, you keep talking about it, they're gonna take them away from me. I've been working hard to get somebody to help me. So
let's make that our secret. But Brandon, everybody's picking on your Los Angeles Lakers, and one thing you can say is that Irvin Magic Johnson has decided that he and his insurance company is going to try and help mitigate that. Brandon, talk about what the Sentinel has or has not received by way of grants and stimulus.
Yeah, I'm not. I will say this: we were privileged to receive the Facebook grant, and we were one of the publications across the country that received that. We're very, very proud and happy of that. Testament to Danny Bakewell Jr., our executive publisher. He's been staunch on the grants and filling out. I don't know. You have to forgive me all of the details of the other loans, if they've came in or not. So I will. Yeah. And similar to Ms. Smith, I'll say I'm wondering about Google. I'm wondering about a few others as well. But Facebook was definitely a big help, and I think it's I give credit to Facebook as well for stepping up and understanding. But again, I say outside of COVID-19, these are the things that we need consistently because the Black press is a necessity. And as many people say, if there's ever a business that is needed, throughout whether pandemic or not. It's press, but it's African American press, and I think your coverage of the Bill Cosby case is a testimony to that. It's phenomenal. You were on the front lines, and the way that the Black Press of America unites and we're able to syndicate stories like that, it adds so much more weight to it. So we're honored to carry that, and just to keep giving you that credit, Stacy. You know, stay on it, and we appreciate you. And you're an example of the power of the pen, but at the same time of how we can exercise that consistently. So I thank you for that.
Well, I can't do it without our president and CEO, Dr. Ben Chavis, and you publishers. I cannot do anything without you guys. Dr. Draper, same question. I want to go to you.
All right, thank you for that. So we've been blessed and fortunate. First of all, let me say this, that our team has been, I'm gonna call names, Bonnie Deans, Dana Peck, Savvy Wood, Lenore Housey, and I'm gonna forget somebody, but we have a team, Kevin, who look for grants and loan opportunities every place that we can. And we have been fortunate in that we did receive the PPP loan. We did receive the $100,000 Facebook grant. We did get the Google, I think it was called the Journalism Emergency Relief Fund. And we have some other partnerships with Facebook for the Video Accelerator, for the membership program. And there's one that I'm forgetting, I think it's Solutions Journalism Grant. And so we are applying for everything that we can. But I want to talk about an opportunity that I believe every single publisher can still do. And so if we show our website just for a moment, we can show our website. I want to click on something and I want to just share this opportunity with every publisher. I think Sunny Messiah Giles, when she was on, shared it, but it's not an application, it's not a grant, but it is a way. And so this is our website. But if you go down to where I'm standing in front of the Afro truck and click on that local news fund. And so there is a group called the Local Media Association. And the Local Media Association has a local media foundation. And I'll be glad to, if anybody wants to hit me up at tdraper@afro.com, put you in touch with the people there. As I said, Sunny Messiah, shout out to Sunny Messiah Giles, who got a $50,000 donation last night. She's leading the pack. But what happens is they'll put a website page up for you, this Local Media Association. I think there are probably 10 or 15 NNPA publishers that are participating. But I love this site because this is not a grant, it's not a loan. But we appeal to our readers to say, listen, local news is important. Local Black news is super important. We represent all that is good about journalism and democracy. So help us help ourselves to increase our COVID coverage. So I didn't throw anything. A video is there. We've raised $23,000 so far. People can put their pictures and put a comment up, which those are very heartwarming comments that people are making about the importance of the Black press, and not just about the Afro. People are talking about, where they got their start. Congressman Kwesi Mfume made a donation. Dwayne Wickham, one of the founders of NABJ, made a donation. They're talking about the importance of the Black press. And so the Local Media Association, you can let them know that if you're interested in doing this, you have to put it out there. You have to ask. That's hard. You have to ask people. We're for any amount of money, we're giving people a complimentary 6-month digital subscription to the Afro. And then those who give $250 or more, we're giving them a complimentary copy of the new book we just did on the suffragists. And so that's what we're doing. God helps those who help us, and I'm not ashamed to ask people to say that, we've been around for 128 years almost, and it's unimaginable that we would not be here for another 128 years, even though I personally won't be here for another 128 years. But it's important. So if you believe in the Black press, what we're saying to our readers and the kind of coverage that we do, especially around COVID, support us. If it's $5, support us.
Yeah.
And so that's available to any publisher that is interested.
Well, Dr. Draper, those 128 years, I think Brandon's going to be around probably for like 100 of those anyway. So we always like to acknowledge those who have joined us. Megha Reed, Celeste Hart, Sienna D, Francis Page Jr., one of our publishers, Patrice Miles, as we mentioned earlier, Bonnie Deans, William Carrington, Barbara Anderson, Clovis Campbell, Arizona Informant, Tracy Austin, Tracy Powell, the Dallas Weekly, David Kelly, Barbara Anderson. We appreciate you guys, even Gary Williams, Gina Wilson Stewart. We love the fact that you took the time to tune in. I want to start with you, Calvin Anderson, on this question. As journalists, we know that African Americans are being killed and are dying at an alarming rate. What do you say to young people who might be concerned about their future?
One, I would say, be encouraged. Two, I would say, tune in to a reference source that you trust, someone that carries the NNPA brand. Three, make sure you're engaged and involved. I mean, two of the things that we have tried to keep a focus on at Tri-State Defender while we have been busy covering COVID has been the Census 2020 and the voter participation needs. That those two items are, forefront and important and should be embraced by our young readers, by our young citizens in our respective cities, because that helps to shape where we are for the next decade and the next 50 years by virtue of what's reported in the census and how the data from the census goes to reshape congressional districts and determine allocations of federal revenue for the next decade. So focus on the census, focus on voter participation, and for our young readers, our young people that are engaged on our various platforms, get involved, get engaged, and and step up to the aspect, because the future really is, I believe, bright, but it's there for those who are engaged and involved.
Yeah, with that same question, we're going to go to Brandon Brooks, then Cheryl Smith, and then let Dr. Draper close that question out. Brandon Brooks, Los Angeles Sentinel, your response?
Yeah, and let me say this first off to the families that experience these tragedies. There's no words. I think some of the more difficult experience I've had in my journalistic career and at the Sentinel is sitting across from a mother who has just lost her child, or showing up to a scene of a murder or a crime of senseless, gun violence. Even earlier this year, I lost a close high school, I would call him a brother, a friend of mine, was laid to rest due to senseless gun violence. So it hit close to home. It's affected me. And God bless Ahmaud Arbery's family and all of these tragic stories. But what I do want to say to answer the question is that the future is bright. I think the one thing that we have to always look forward to, and we're kind of like a church in ourselves. We have a religion section too, but we stand strong. And I think Black press has always held our heads up high and our chest out in the midst of tragedy and despair. And even when it was founded, it was on the purpose of having a voice for ourselves, speaking up. And that's still important to this very day. So I would just tell those youngsters to keep your eye on the prize and know that there's the world is in front of you. And the LA Sentinel and the LA Watts Times newspapers are an example of trying to highlight the variety of African Americans and what we do. We do cover, like I said, unfortunate shootings. There's even a local case starting to get national attention again of a young brother out of Gardena who was killed by the name of Kenneth Ross Jr. And they're starting to find out that he was not armed, as they say. So a lot of, so expect some updates from us on that. But it's really just tough. I think we see a time in history where we would hope things are getting better, which they have. But I think we're also the younger generation is being alerted to a lot of the institutional racism, a lot of the racism that still does exist within our society. So I would say, stay strong, keep learning, stay educated, keep informing and educating yourself. And that's where the Black press comes in hand, because you don't have to sign up for school to sign up with us. So, you know, we do want you to go to school. Don't get me wrong. But I'm just saying that we are a tool of information, education, and that's very vital for our community. So we appreciate that. But keep your head up high. That's what I would say.
Cheryl Smith.
Yes, I have to say, and as a college educator, I talk to students all the time. But I'd say I talk to them, but more importantly, I listen to them. I try to see what's going on in their head, how they're seeing things. And I think that's really important because I have found that, and I have to talk to my peers and folks and say, hey, you got to get out and touch them. You have to get out and not act like you're afraid of them, because to a certain extent, we demonize our young people. And it is very, very, very unfortunate that we have done that and that we look down on them. We're afraid of them when we need to be more engaged. And those we have a moral responsibility to these young people and stop treating them like they came here on spaceships. If we say they're entitled, it's because we entitled them. If we say they're not doing what they're supposed to be, I can tell you, a guy in an interview 2 weeks ago called me Cheryl, and I'm just thinking about all the people I had to call. If I didn't call him Mr. or Miss, I had to call him Auntie or Uncle. And I know it impacted where we went with the interview, but it's something. But if they don't know better, they can't do better. And who better to teach them than us? But we have to listen and see what motivates them. You can't tell a brother on the street, pull your pants up and you're not going to get a job. They don't, you can't tell them, just like the brothers. And do they want a job? The job that we go to where we come home all stressed, those who don't work for the Black press, because we don't get stressed, but those who work for other people and they come home stressed and want to kill somebody, they aren't looking for those type of jobs anyway. But then we have to see what motivates, and we have to talk to them and add them, and we have to listen to them, and we can't act like we're afraid of them. A lot of these people in my age group are becoming retirees right now. You got to step out. Your work is not done, and you need to grab hold to some of these young people. You may call them knuckleheads, but grab hold to them. And I bring them into my office. I say, come on down here. I got something for you to do. Everything isn't going to work out, but nothing works if you don't try.
Dr. Draper, Baltimore, DC, Afro-American.
I think one thing we can say to young people, certainly we can express our concern about how they're being killed and dying at unprecedented rates. But I think we also should say to our young people that through our publications, they have a forum. And so we give them an opportunity to write. We give them an opportunity to submit photographs. We have young people who come to intern with us. And so we make those opportunities available. I think we have to give them a voice. And we can't just write what we think they want to hear or to read, but we have to ask them. And that's a way to, I think, engage young people. The question was, and they're concerned about their future. Their future is part of our present. And too often we wait and say, well, we'll get your input later. We need their input now, and they have to know. And so young people have sent us poems and they've sent essays, and we have interns that work with us now. Hey there, Corsica, if you're watching, a shout out to you. And so we embrace young people in their ideas, in their ideals, and it starts young. If we don't start young engaging them, then when they get our age, they really won't be reading. And I'll say this last thing, everyone knows about the Freddie Gray case in Baltimore. And Sean Yos, a shout out to you. Sean Yos, our Baltimore editor, wrote about Freddie Gray every day for years and ended up putting that in a book. And so he produced a book of all of his columns that he wrote about Freddie Gray, which I think is it's a brilliant piece of journalism that really guides young people and old alike.
Yeah, thanks for that, Dr. Draper. And with 2 minutes or less, we're going to go around the horn here. This is an election year, of course, an important election year. It seems that being that it is more important than anyone that has gone before it. Are you working within your communities to spur engagement? And we'll start with you, Cheryl Smith.
I'm so tired. I'm so tired. I'm like, how many ways can I talk to you all about voting and being engaged? but I can't stop, won't stop. That's the mentality. But yes, we are, and the interesting thing is we need to educate our politicians. And it's amazing how they can come to us. I'm looking outside and I see a billboard up, but then you come to me, I don't have any money to advertise, or and then it's just something really strange that they say get your money from your politicians advertising, get it from them up front because it says that they're dishonest, and then they're not paying you. And you got to thinking about that, but we are constantly trying to educate. We're doing voter education and participating. And I have even written the one thing I will tell you this that is a challenge because I want to get to a place where we are seriously, I'm talking about seriously endorsing candidates. And the thing we have to deal with is you have to have the freedom to do it. And I'm not going to do it because you pay me to endorse you. But Negroes, you don't endorse them and you endorse their opponent, they won't advertise with you because you didn't endorse them, but they will go advertise with everybody else. It's a challenge educating those politicians as well as educating our community. And I just can't stop. It's something we keep talking about and showing people voting. Last week, we had on our paper a woman, 107, who died. And she voted because we had featured her before when 5 generations were voting. So, we're continuing to try to educate and get young people engaged and come up with that formula that makes them feel the need to go and vote.
Yeah, thanks for that.
And tell us to stop accepting mediocre from other folks. And let them, if you can let them in your church, then they know the importance of us. So they need to come back and they need to be advertising with us as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Brandon Brooks, 2 minutes or less.
Yeah, we will. I'll say this. I know we're going to continue our engagement with our community. We've always been on the front lines of just signing up voters. We've had voter registration drives actually held at our office and working with different community organizations. So obviously, as we are kind of all adjusting to this current climate, I think a lot of this will take shape via digital in the next few months. So I'm a little curious to see what we will do, but I'm excited in knowing that we've already highlighted this as an important issue, and we're gonna continue to work at it. So I believe that there's again this virtual world we're in today. More than ever, it's even a way to bridge the gap that much quicker. So I'm looking at this as an opportunity to engage with our readers and also to be advocates to get people to sign up and vote, because the key is you have to exercise your vote. And we've always been on the front lines of making sure people understand that. One other thing I just want to say, I know my time is short, is I want to give credit to, I think, Francis Page out of the Houston. I was watching his live stream with you all last week, and he talked about, similar to Ms. Smith, advertising. The politicians need to advertise, and they have to put their money where their mouth is in that sense, because I will give NNPA and Mike Bloomberg credit when he was running for taking national advertising, and the LA Sentinel was one of the beneficiaries of that. But it showed that he understood the importance of the Black press. Similar to what Francis Page said, let's hope presidential candidate Joe Biden understands the same. And if he doesn't, I will second Mr. Page in this and say that that's an issue, and we need to write about that. If he does not take advertising out or ask the question, why not? And we need to write about it, because because they do want our help when the time seems right or says right for them, but we need you all year long. So we don't want it to go dark, as they say, during these times. This is the time that the Democratic Party needs to step up and advertise. And again, we're a paper. We have Republicans that read our paper. So if you're a Republican candidate and you want to advertise with us, get your message out there. But ultimately, you as politicians and governmental entities need to step up. So I'll leave it there. But yeah, let's see our presidential candidate step it up. I'm hoping to see that, and let's add some little pressure on that. But I think as a unit, we can apply that pressure right.
Yeah, and Brandon, just so you know, the bosses are watching. Pamela Bakewell has given her thumbs up. So Calvin Anderson, same question to you.
Well, like Brandon talked about, activity around voter participation on the tri-state part will be in place for Cheryl's point of can't stop, won't stop. So it's election year, so we have to participate. There is a responsibility that we have to, give to our community that says participation is not an option, and we really do have to push for, greater engagement. I think we want to be, conscious and aware that in this, COVID environment, we don't know what the circumstances and situations may look like in August and November election cycle. So I think we have to be pushing for having as much flexibility in voting in our respective states and communities as possible, and make that sort of a working hallmark that we do in conjunction with other organizations, and that we do in conjunction and discussions with decision makers. That is something that we put within our content pages from a news and information standpoint, but also something we put within our advocacy toolkit to say that we're going to have something that we press and stay on, where you want all of those who are running for office and asking for votes and considerations in the African American community to be supportive of that with advertising. We have sort of the standpoint that says we're going to put the issues there regardless of what the candidates and the campaigns put forward. So I think it's that thing Stacey said, it's election year, we got to participate, so let's do what our publications legacy say that we've always done, and hope for the kind of engagement in it that we'd like to see.
Thanks a lot. And Dr. Draper.
Okay, so while all politics is local, and we have a very robust process at the Afro for our local politicians that includes questionnaires and interviews and all of that for the Afro endorsement, I think that this upcoming national election is a wonderful opportunity for NNPA papers to collaborate. We ought to do a national town hall where the candidates come and answer our questions for our community. I think this would be a great time for us to just do that, come up with whatever the forum is, the questions are, and then hold them accountable, even ask our readers and our viewers, for those of us who are on digital platforms, what would you like to ask them? And we should ask them. And we should ask them the hard questions, whether they're Democrat or Republican. If we want to ask about their non-support from an advertising standpoint, we can do that too. But we ought to bring them to the table. Not wait for them to send something to us, bring them to the table and say, Mr. Candidate, Miss Candidate, you cannot take the African-American vote for granted. And you cannot assume that because many of us are saying anybody but who we have now, you cannot take our vote for granted. You're going to have to answer questions, and we should get our partners involved, like we partner in Baltimore, like I'm sure you all do with our local NAACP, and really hit them hard. And if they don't come to our interview or our forum, put an empty chair there and we'll answer for them, because that'll be the answer, is that they're not interested. But I think when we take a proactive stand and hold people accountable, I'm not begging anybody for advertising. You should advertise because we provide what we need to provide for our community. And if we engage our community the right way, they'll be coming to us and saying, do you have space in your publication to run my ad? And I want to hold them accountable and call them out. They don't control newspapers and media. We have the control. We can write about that across this country from 200 newspapers, and it's not a thing they can do about it. So I don't mean to be so passionate about, but I'm tired of them taking us. Well, I guess I do. I'm not going to apologize for being passionate. I'm tired of them taking us for granted. But we have power. We talk about the power of the pen. Let's use it. Hold them accountable. What are they going to do? We've got a bigger platform, and we ought to just use it.
No, well, a programming note before we close. Next Monday, we do this again with 4 more of our iconic publishers: Pluriel Marshall of Marshall Broadcasting and LA Wave, Fran Farrar of the County News in Charlotte, North Carolina, Gene Boone of the Richmond Free Press in Virginia, and Shirley Gray of the Dallas Post-Tribune. Friday, I want everybody to tune in. We're starting a new series, and Dr. Nasinga Burton will be hosting that at 11 a.m. It's the COVID-19 and the future of HBCUs with Dr. Nasinga Burton. And her first guest is going to be the president of Virginia State University. So tune in on Friday. And of course, tomorrow, we are all excited about a visit from the legendary Ice Cube. Yay, yay. So everybody, we thank you for tuning in. Dr. Francis Toni Draper, Baltimore Afro, Cheryl Smith, Texas Metro News, Calvin Anderson, New Tri-State Defender, and Brandon Brooks of the Los Angeles Sentinel. We appreciate you, everybody. Thank you for tuning in. Stay safe and stay well.
Thank you.
Thank you.